She sat still while the others laughed. The C-130 trembled through turbulence, its engines roaring like thunder across the Hindu Kush, and Lucy King barely blinked. Around her, hardened men slept, joked, or checked weapons with the half-conscious rhythm of habit. They were warriors who'd done this too many times to count, but none of them could sleep near her. Why? Because she didn't belong here. At least that's what they thought. One of them, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Reeves, caught her eyes across the cargo bay. He looked away first. Everyone did. There was something in those eyes, gray and quiet and unreadable, that made even seasoned operators feel measured, judged. She looked like one of them, the same desert fatigues, the same body armor, the same tactical gear. But there was a stillness in her that didn't match the noise of men who'd built their lives on controlled chaos. She was too calm, too ready. Someone had called her intel support. But the way her hands moved, slow, practiced, exact, said otherwise. 30 minutes to drop, the loadmaster shouted, voice echoing through the fuselage. The seals stirred, magazines checked, optics adjusted, gloves tightened. The same ritual every mission, performed like a prayer against the unknown. Lucy ran her own checklist, but hers was quieter, internal. Sidearm loaded. Magazines accounted for. Medical kit, comms, knife. And a single black case under her seat that none of them were supposed to notice. They didn't ask. They never did, because they didn't expect her to use it. Then came the commander. Lieutenant Commander Jack Hawthorne, 6'3" of muscle and reputation, moved down the bay with the confidence of a man who'd never failed hard enough to remember the feeling. He stopped in front of her. King, his tone was the kind of polite that meant listen carefully. Let's set expectations. This is a direct action raid. You stay with the command element, you observe, you take notes. You do not engage unless we're being overrun and you've got no other choice. Clear. Her gaze met his, steady. Crystal, sir. I mean it. You're here because command wants eyes on the ground. That's it. I've got 12 shooters who have trained together for months. We don't need heroics from the intelligence section. Understood, she said, without a flicker of emotion. He waited like he expected a protest, an excuse, something. But she just looked at him, silent as stone. Eventually, he grunted and moved on. Behind her, someone muttered under their breath, "Bet you $20 she freezes the second round start flying." "No bet," another answered. "They always do." She didn't react, didn't need to. Words were data. Tone, rhythm, ego, all stored, all remembered. That was part of her job, after all. Listening to what people revealed when they thought they were safe. And right now, these men were telling her exactly what she already knew. They saw her as baggage wrapped in a uniform. The aircraft dropped altitude, shaking with the force of the descent. Someone made the sign of the cross. Another closed his eyes. Lucy just exhaled once, slow and even. She didn't pray, didn't visualize victory. She simply accepted what was coming. The ramp dropped, and Afghanistan's dawn air rushed in, dry, sharp, and cold, tasting of dust and fuel. Boots hit the earth. Formation spread. Everything by the book. Lucy followed, staying with the command element exactly as ordered. She looked like an observer. She moved like one. But inside, a different rhythm pulsed, one the others couldn't feel. Because Lucy King had never been just an observer. And before this mission was over, everyone here would learn what that meant. The compound sat in a valley scarred by war, framed by terraced hillsides and the ghostly outlines of mud-brick homes. The pre-dawn light washed everything in gray and violet, turning the landscape into something ancient and mournful. Intel said the target was inside, a high-value Taliban commander with a handful of guards. Simple, precise, surgical. Intel was wrong. It often was. The seals advanced like shadows, every movement rehearsed, every breath measured. Chief Reeves was on point, eyes scanning for IEDs, reading the ground like a language only he understood. Lucy's role was simple: observe, report, survive. She stayed close to Commander Hawthorne and the radio operator, watching the assault team move in. The valley was still, too still. Her instincts twitched, that old, quiet alarm that had saved her life more times than luck ever could. Something's wrong. The silence wasn't peace, it was absence. No dogs, no birds, no distant voices. Nothing. Sir, she said quietly, something's off. Hawthorne barely glanced at her. They're asleep, we're here before dawn, that's the point. No dogs, she repeated. Rural Afghanistan, King, maybe they ate them. Maybe, she said softly. But her hand moved closer to her radio anyway. Then the world split open. The explosion hit like a physical blow, a buried IED timed with terrifying precision. The blast threw dirt, debris, and men into the air. The shockwave slammed through her chest, leaving her ears ringing. Smoke, fire, screams. The radio erupted with chaos, calls for the corpsmen, for situational reports, for air support. And then came the gunfire. Not from the compound. From the hills. They were surrounded. Tracer fire ripped the air. Bullets cracked against rock. The valley that had seemed quiet seconds ago now burned with muzzle flashes, dozens of them, from fortified positions hidden in the slopes. This wasn't an ambush, it was an execution. Contact left, multiple positions, Reeves shouted, his voice drowned in automatic fire. Get to cover, Hawthorne yelled, trying to rally his men, but there was no cover. The valley floor was open, a kill zone designed to trap elite soldiers and bleed them dry. Lucy pressed herself against a low wall, scanning the chaos with cold precision. Positions firing in coordinated bursts, three-man cells, elevated vantage points, she counted, calculated. 30, maybe 40 combatants, perfect crossfire. They knew the SEALs' approach routes, their timing, their playbook. Someone had sold them out. The radio crackled. Outpost Delta is under attack, heavy contact, can't support. Of course, a coordinated hit, a perfect trap. Hawthorne was screaming orders. Reeves was dragging a wounded man to partial cover, cursing through blood. Rounds snapped overhead, the air alive with death. Lucy's hand went to her sidearm, then stopped. Too far, too many, too exposed. Her pulse slowed instead of quickening, a strange calm, born from repetition and something darker. She raised her radio, voice steady. Heathen 6, this is Cipher 7. Request immediate air support, coordinates to follow. Multiple enemy positions dug in, prepared defenses. Cipher 7, Heathen 6. Air assets 20 minutes out, can you hold? She looked around. Men dying, bleeding. The best trained warriors on Earth pinned down and helpless. 20 minutes might as well have been forever. Negative, Heathen 6, we need it now. No answer. She dropped the radio, crawled toward the small ridge that overlooked the enemy positions. King, get down, Hawthorne roared. Stay in cover. She didn't listen. She stood calm as someone rising from a pew and walked into the open. Bullets whipped past her, close enough to taste. The SEALs stared in disbelief. Nobody stood up in a firefight, not if they wanted to live. But Lucy King wasn't anyone else. She knelt behind a small dirt berm, unclipped the case from her back and opened it. Inside lay a weapon no intelligence analyst should have had: compact, matte black, fitted with a suppressor and optics that didn't belong in standard issue. The kind of rifle built for one purpose only. She deployed the bipod, adjusted the stock, and went prone. Reeves shouted something, Hawthorne cursed. None of it mattered. Lucy's breathing slowed. One inhale, one exhale. She found her first target, the PKM gunner hammering rounds into the SEAL's position. Her finger moved. Crack! The sound was barely audible, but the man on the hill folded instantly, the machine gun falling silent. Second shot, another burst coordinator, dead before he hit the ground. Then another. And another. Each one clean, deliberate, absolute. The SEALs stopped firing, not because they were told to, but because they were watching something they didn't understand. An analyst, eliminating an entire ambush. At 400 meters, she hit an RPG gunner mid-movement. Before the loader could react, crack. Two bodies dropped, one breath between them. Jesus Christ, Torres whispered. Who is this woman? Hawthorne lowered his scope, eyes wide. King, what the hell are you? She didn't answer. Her world had narrowed to glass and distance, the slow rhythm of breath and recoil. Through the scope, the hillside was a chessboard. Every piece she removed changed the game. The enemy commander tried to reposition, thinking he was invisible. He was. Lucy led him by inches, squeezed. Perfect shot, perfect silence. The ambush began to unravel, the enemy fire breaking into chaos, fighters running, confused. Discipline dissolved into panic. They're breaking, Reeves said, disbelief coloring his voice. She's breaking them by herself. When the shooting stopped, it didn't end with a bang. It just faded. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. Lucy rose from the dust, eyes sweeping the hills. Her face revealed nothing. No adrenaline tremor, no pride. Just focus, stillness. Hawthorne approached, cautious. King, he said, voice low, what was that? She met his gaze. That was me keeping your team alive, sir. Intel analysts don't shoot like that. I'm not really an analyst. He blinked. No, you're not, then what are you? She reloaded with surgical precision. The person they send when intelligence isn't enough. And then she turned away, her voice quiet, almost lost in the wind. The person they send when the killing has to stay invisible. The smell of cordite and burned earth clung to the air long after the gunfire stopped. Smoke drifted from the hillside like ghosts unwilling to leave. The valley that had been hell moments ago was now just quiet. Too quiet. Lucy rose from the dirt, rifle held low, scanning for movement that no longer existed. Every breath felt borrowed, every second too still. The SEALs were scattered, their uniforms caked with blood and dust, eyes wide in that stunned silence that only came after surviving something that should have killed you. A man groaned nearby. Reeves was already dragging a wounded teammate toward cover, his own face streaked red from a cut above his eye. The corpsman knelt beside them, hands shaking as he packed gauze into a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. Lucy moved through the chaos with the same calm she'd carried into the firefight, unhurried, precise, detached. She knelt beside a man gasping for air and tightened the tourniquet on his leg. "You're fine," she murmured, voice low, steady. "You're alive. Breathe." Her words weren't comforting, they were orders. The helicopter would be coming soon, or maybe not. In war, even promises from the sky came late. Commander Hawthorne approached, weapon slung, dust still clinging to his beard. His face was a battlefield of emotions, awe, confusion, suspicion. He stopped a few feet away, not close enough to touch her. "What the hell was that, King?" he asked quietly. She didn't look up. "That was me keeping your team alive, sir." His eyes narrowed. "No analyst shoots like that." "I told you," she said, locking eyes with him now. "I'm not really an analyst." "No kidding," he exhaled, half laugh, half disbelief. "So what are you really?" She stood, slung the rifle across her chest. "The person they send when intelligence isn't enough. The one they send when things go wrong and no one's supposed to know how they got fixed." Silence hung heavy between them. Reeves limped over, catching only the last part. "Who the hell trained you?" he muttered, shaking his head. Because I've seen some good shooters, but that wasn't human. Lucy glanced at him, expression neutral, eyes cold. Not something you learn in training, Chief. Something you survive long enough to understand. The sun climbed higher, burning away the chill. The battlefield looked different now, stripped of its chaos, revealing its cost. Spent casings littered the dirt, blood mixed with dust, smoke rose from shattered equipment. And in that brutal morning light, Lucy King looked impossibly composed. No tremor in her hands, no adrenaline shakes, just stillness, the kind of stillness that frightened men who'd spent their lives in violence. A low rumble echoed in the distance. The Chinook was coming. "Evac bird inbound," someone shouted. The men began to move, helping the wounded, collecting their dead. The radio crackled with clipped confirmations, all protocol and procedure, as if discipline could mask the chaos that had just happened. Hawthorne turned back to Lucy. "When we get back," he said, "we're going to have a conversation." She nodded once, "Of course." But her eyes drifted toward the ridgeline, scanning one last time. Watching, always watching. The helicopter descended in a storm of dust. Rotor wash whipped through the valley, stinging their faces, drowning out thought. The wounded went first, some on stretchers, others limping with help. The rest filed in behind them, one by one, their silence heavier than the noise of war. Lucy was the last to move. She stood at the edge of the landing zone, the valley stretching out before her, the scene of what she'd just done. 17 men, maybe more, all gone because she decided not to stay in her assigned place. She felt nothing, or maybe she just learned how to bury it too deep to feel. Hawthorne's hand caught her arm at the ramp, not roughly, just enough to stop her. "We need to talk when we get back," he shouted over the noise. "I'll file a written report." "I don't want your report, King. I want to know who you really work for." She looked at him evenly. "I work for the same country you do, Commander. I was doing my job." "Bullshit." "That's all you're going to know, sir." Her voice didn't rise, it didn't need to. It was calm, final. Then she stepped past him and boarded. The Chinook lifted off, the valley shrinking beneath them until it looked like just another scar on the earth. Inside, the air was thick with silence. Some men treated wounds. Others just stared into nothing, trapped in the echo of what they'd seen. Lucy sat alone near the crew chief's station, methodically breaking down her rifle. The motions were fluid, automatic, a ritual of control. Metal, oil, cloth. Wipe, check, reassemble. Across from her, Reeves finally looked up. He watched her hands work, watched the quiet precision of someone who'd done this thousands of times before. He hesitated, then softly, "My daughter wants to join the military." Lucy didn't respond, just kept cleaning. "I've been trying to talk her out of it," he continued. "Told her it's no place for women, that she'll never be respected, that the guys will never really accept her." Lucy's voice was calm. "You should stop." "Stop what?" "Lying to your daughter." He blinked, lying. She looked at him then, eyes gray and steady. "You've been telling her she can't, when you should have been preparing her for the fact that she absolutely can." Reeves sat back. The engines droned. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, he asked, "How long have you been doing this, whatever this is?" "The real work," she asked. 8 years. He hesitated. "How many?" Lucy finished for him. "How many I've killed." He didn't answer. "Enough that I stopped counting," she said quietly, "but not so many that I've stopped remembering." He looked at her, surprised. "You remember them?" "Every one," she said. "Every face, every decision. You have to, that's the price." For a long moment, only the sound of the helicopter filled the silence. Then he said, "You're young." "Old enough." Her voice was flat but not cold, just tired. "Your daughter," she added, "if she wants to serve, help her, train her. Don't protect her from the truth. The world won't. Don't tell her she can't just because it's hard. Tell her how to be ready when people like you tell her she can't. He gave a small, rueful laugh. Yeah, that's gonna sting. She'll forgive you, Lucy said, sliding her rifle into its case. If she survives. The helicopter banked sharply, and the base came into view, rows of tents and prefab buildings spread across the valley floor. The illusion of order in a world built on chaos. Lucy's eyes narrowed. She'd been here before, too many times. Each base looked the same, the smell of diesel, the rhythm of engines, the endless sound of rotors. And behind every mission the same question, who knew what and when? Because someone had known about this raid. Someone had fed the enemy everything they needed. And Lucy King intended to find out who. The Chinook touched down in a storm of dust. Medics rushed forward. Officers shouted orders. Chaos reclaimed the landing zone, the controlled kind this time, the bureaucracy of aftermath. Lucy stepped off, rifle case slung over her shoulder, face unreadable. She blended into the crowd like a ghost fading into daylight. No cheers, no acknowledgement, just another face in a war that didn't have room for names. Captain King. The voice stopped her cold. Not Lucy, not King, Captain. She turned. A man in civilian clothes stood beside a black SUV that had no business being here. He was in his 50s, lean, with the kind of posture that came from a lifetime of command. His eyes were hard and tired, the eyes of someone who'd seen too much and stopped pretending otherwise. Mr. Harrison, she said evenly. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. They moved away from the noise, past stacked shipping containers and parked vehicles, until they were alone in the shadow of a steel wall. I had 16 separate intelligence feeds, Harrison began, telling me this operation was going to be clean, target in place, minimal security, textbook. He stopped, turning to face her, and instead it turned into a goddamn congressional hearing waiting to happen. The intelligence was compromised, Lucy said simply. No shit, his jaw tightened. The question is how and by who. She said nothing. But that's not why I'm here, he continued. I'm here because you violated your cover. You were supposed to observe, not engage, not draw attention, not kill 17 men. Would you prefer those 17 to be American? She asked quietly. I'd prefer you follow orders. His tone sharpened. You're not a SEAL, you're not even officially military, you're an asset, and assets don't freelance. Her gaze didn't waver. You put me on the ground to provide real-time intelligence. I did that, and when it went bad, I acted. You acted outside the mission. I acted to keep them alive. Your job isn't to decide who lives or dies, Harrison said coldly. It's to maintain your cover. You start acting like an operator and people start asking questions, and questions lead to answers we don't want them finding. Lucy shifted her weight slightly, a movement so small most people wouldn't have noticed. But Harrison did. He knew the look of a predator deciding how many steps it would take to end a conversation permanently. He took half a step back. So what happens now? She asked. Now, he said, voice tight, you write your report. You explain that the enemy positions were already compromised by airstrikes before you arrived. You explain that you provided intel support that enabled effective engagement. You explain everything, except the part where you personally killed half the enemy force. You want me to lie, she said. I want you to maintain operational security, he replied. There's a difference. She studied him, and if I refuse, then you'll find yourself reassigned to a desk in Virginia, analyzing satellite photos of sand dunes until you forget what color blood looks like. The words hit like a slow blade. Because he was right, not about the threat, but about the truth underneath it. Lucy King wasn't made for desks or distance. She was made for edges. I'll write the report, she said finally. Good, he said. And King, next time you're inserted on an op, remember your job: observation, analysis, support, not heroics." He turned and walked away. Lucy watched him go, the man who pulled her strings, the system that controlled her silence. Then she looked down at her hands. No tremor, no sweat, nothing. But inside, beneath the armor and orders, something stirred, quiet and certain. A calculation. A decision forming like a shadow. The war might belong to men like Harrison, but the truth belonged to her. And the next time someone told her what she couldn't do, she'd remind them. Not with words, but with precision, with silence, and a trigger pull. 3 days. That's how long it took for the dust to settle, for reports to be written, for stories to be adjusted, until they sounded like something command could believe. Lucy King sat alone in the gray room, windowless, air thick with the hum of recycled ventilation, the kind of room where secrets were born and buried. A single light glowed above the steel table, too bright, casting hard shadows that made her look almost spectral. She hadn't slept much, 3 hours a night, enough to keep the edges sharp. Her uniform was immaculate, her weapons stored, her demeanor calm. But under that still surface, something in her was shifting, a quiet revolt that didn't yet have a name. The door opened. Commander Jack Hawthorne entered first, his presence filling the room. Chief Reeves followed, his face marked by a healing scar. Then came 2 men in civilian suits, Joint Special Operations Command, judging by the badges and the way they carried authority like a hidden weapon. Hawthorne didn't sit right away. He just looked at her, long, searching, maybe even conflicted. "Captain King," he began, voice level. Official rank now, no sarcasm this time. "Commander," she said. He finally took a seat. The chair scraped against concrete, loud in the stillness. "The official report," he said, glancing down at the folder in front of him, "states that the enemy positions were degraded by preparatory fires before our team arrived, that you provided valuable real-time intelligence that enabled effective targeting, that the operation, while costly, was ultimately successful." He looked up. "But we all know that's bullshit." The word hung in the air like smoke. The JSOC officers didn't flinch, which told Lucy they already knew that too. Hawthorne leaned forward. "So I'm going to ask you once, Captain, who do you really work for?" Lucy studied him, her expression unreadable. She'd rehearsed this moment in her head 100 times since the ambush, every possible version of it, every way it could go wrong, and she'd made a choice. She would tell the truth. "Not the official one, the real one. I work for an organization that doesn't officially exist," she said. Her voice was calm, clear. "We identify situations where conventional military responses are impossible or inadvisable. We insert assets, people like me, to resolve those situations through direct action while maintaining plausible deniability for the United States government." One of the JSOC men exhaled through his nose, unimpressed. "You're an assassin." Lucy didn't blink. "I'm a problem solver. The targets are always verified, always legitimate threats to American lives or interests. But sometimes those threats are protected by borders, by politics, by people who can't be touched through official means." Reeves leaned back in his chair, eyes never leaving her. "So you're what? A ghost? One of those myths people whisper about in training, the ones they say don't exist?" "I'm someone who's been given very specific training and very specific authorities to do a very specific job," she said. "My job is keeping Americans alive when the rules make that impossible." The room was quiet. Even the air vents seemed to pause. Hawthorne's voice softened. "In the valley." "They knew you were coming," Lucy said. "Someone in the Afghan security forces tipped them off. They had your approach routes, your timing, your call signs. It was supposed to be a massacre." His jaw tightened. "Instead, it turned into a miracle." No, Lucy said softly. It turned into a reminder that underestimating the wrong person can cost you everything. Reeves gave a low whistle, leaning forward. You saved our lives, King. I did my job. No, he said firmly. You went way beyond your job. You broke your cover. You risked exposure. You risked whatever operation you were on to save us. Why? Lucy hesitated. For the first time in days, her composure cracked, not visibly, but somewhere deep in her voice, a tremor she didn't want to be there. Because that's what we do, she said finally. We keep Americans alive, even when they don't know we exist, even when they wouldn't approve if they did. She looked at Hawthorne, then at the men in suits. We stand in the shadows, so you can stand in the light. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was reverent, heavy with understanding. Then one of the JSOC officers cleared his throat. This conversation never happened, he said. This briefing doesn't exist. As far as records are concerned, Captain King provided intelligence support. That's all. Everyone nodded. Everyone except Hawthorne. He stayed still, eyes locked on her like he was trying to memorize the shape of the truth. The officers left. Reeves followed, offering her a faint nod before disappearing through the door. And then there were two. Hawthorne and Lucy. The commander and the ghost. For a moment neither spoke. The tension was strange, not hostile, not exactly grateful. Something in between, something heavier. For what it's worth, Hawthorne said finally, I was wrong about you, completely wrong. Most people are, she said quietly. He half smiled. You ever get tired of that? She looked down at her hands. You get used to it. He studied her for a long moment. Must be lonely. Lucy's voice was almost a whisper, sometimes. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded, expression softening into something almost human. I've been doing this job 12 years, thought I'd seen everything. But what you did out there, I've never seen anyone shoot like that, ever. And I've seen the best. She didn't answer. Will I see you again? He asked. Probably not, she said. People like me don't stick around, we move, we adapt, we disappear. That's a hell of a way to live. It's the only way I know. She stood, gathering her folder, empty, symbolic. Hawthorne rose too. King, he said, stopping her at the door, one last thing. She turned. Thank you for my men, for keeping them alive. Her eyes softened just for a heartbeat. You're welcome, Commander. He nodded, then hesitated. Can I ask you something else? Go ahead. Why not tell me the truth from the start? Lucy smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Because you wouldn't have believed me. She stepped through the doorway, her boots echoing down the hall, each step fading into the hum of the bass outside. And then she was gone. Just like that. The woman who wasn't supposed to exist had vanished into the system that created her. Hawthorne stood alone in the concrete room, staring at the empty chair she'd left behind. There were reports to file, missions to plan, men to lead, but his mind kept circling back to one question he couldn't shake. How many other Lucys were out there? And if there were more, who were they really fighting for? 6 months later, a different country. Different landscape. Same ghost. Lucy King lay prone on a barren hillside, the rifle pressed against her shoulder, its bipod sunk deep into dry soil. The scope's crosshairs floated over a distant building, a concrete villa tucked between olive trees and stone walls. Beside her, a young spotter shifted nervously, trying to stay still. His breathing was too fast, his voice too loud. You really do this, he whispered. Just wait for someone to give you a shot, take it, then disappear. Lucy didn't look away from the scope. That's the job. Doesn't it bother you? His voice trembled slightly. Killing people from distance, they don't even know you're there. It used to, she said softly. Then I stopped thinking of it as killing people. started thinking of it as solving problems. She adjusted her scope a fraction of a degree, compensating for a wind shift her spotter hadn't even noticed yet. "That man in that house," she said. "He's planning an attack that will kill hundreds, maybe thousands. He's protected by his government, by law, by layers of people who'd rather debate than act. Conventional options failed. That's why I'm here." She inhaled slowly. "When I take this shot, no one will cheer, no one will even know. But tomorrow, hundreds of people will wake up alive. That's how I live with it." The spotter said nothing. The radio crackled in her ear. "Cipher 7, confirmed target." Lucy's finger rested lightly on the trigger. "Target confirmed." "Stand by." She exhaled, standing by. Her heartbeat slowed, syncing with her breathing. The world around her narrowed to a tunnel, the scope, the target, the single motion that separated peace from chaos. "Execute." Her finger moved. The rifle whispered once. Through the scope the target dropped. No scream, no drama, just stillness, a life erased with surgical precision. Lucy watched for confirmation. None needed. The problem was solved. "Target neutralized," she whispered. "Exfil in 5. She began breaking down her weapon, motions precise, practiced. The young spotter just watched her, wide-eyed, as if trying to understand what kind of person could be that calm after ending a life. Lucy glanced at him once, voice low but certain. "The wolf doesn't announce itself to the sheep." She zipped the rifle case closed, eyes flicking toward the horizon. "Let's move." They slipped away into the night, leaving behind nothing but a faint echo and a truth the world would never know. America's deadliest wolves didn't wear medals. They didn't seek glory. They carried burdens that no one would ever understand. And Lucy King, quiet, unrecognized, unseen, carried hers in silence. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Night never ended for people like her. It only changed countries. A week later, Lucy King was on another flight, another unmarked aircraft with no insignia, crossing a sea of darkness where the stars felt too close. The hum of the engines was steady, hypnotic, the sound of distance growing between who she'd been and who she'd become. She sat by the window staring at nothing. Her reflection stared back, framed by faint cabin light, pale, sharp-eyed, tired. Every mission took a piece. She stopped keeping track of which pieces were gone. The handler, not Harrison this time, but a younger face with the same cold efficiency, slid into the seat across from her. "Your wheel's down in 6 hours," he said. "Destination classified until approach." Lucy didn't answer. He studied her. "You've been operating solo too long." "I work better alone." "That's not the point. You're starting to believe your own legend." She turned her head slowly. "Legend." He smirked, but there was no humor in it. "The one the SEALs whisper about. The ghost who saved them. The sniper who doesn't miss." Lucy went back to the window. "People whisper about things they don't understand." "Or things that scare them," he said. "Command wants eyes on you. Psychological eval after this op." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "So they want to know if the weapon still works." He didn't deny it. When the plane touched down, dawn was breaking over Eastern Europe, fog rising from pine forests, a thin layer of frost painting the ground silver. Lucy stepped out into air so cold it bit through her gloves. No flags here, no allies, just a safe house that didn't exist in a country pretending not to host her. The mission file waited inside, a slim tablet on a steel table. Target Dragan Kovacevic. Former intelligence chief turned arms broker. Connected to chemical shipments bound for the Middle East. Objective, confirmation, and containment. Containment meant what it always meant: kill. Lucy read every line, though she already knew how it would end. She traced the map routes, the photos, the timestamps, all routine. But when she reached the last page, she froze. The secondary contact listed was Harrison. He was back. Her handler's voice echoed in her head. You've been operating solo too long. Maybe that was the plan all along, put her back on the leash. 2 days later, Lucy was in position above a mountain estate that overlooked a frozen river. The target was inside, surrounded by guards wearing new Russian-issue gear they weren't supposed to have. She lay prone beneath a camouflage veil, her rifle steady on its bipod, breath misting into the cold. Every movement around the villa was mapped in her mind. Patrol routes, shift changes, the rhythm of cigarettes lit and crushed into snow. Through her earpiece, a voice broke the silence. Cipher 7, this is Overwatch 1. You have visual. Lucy kept her eye to the scope. Confirmed. Target verified. She hesitated. Inside the villa, Kovacevic laughed, a low, booming sound she could hear even through insulated glass. He was entertaining guests, civilians, maybe family. 2 children ran through the hall, chasing each other with wooden toys. Lucy's finger froze against the trigger guard. Cipher 7, verify. The voice repeated, sharper this time. She exhaled slowly. Target verified. But her stomach tightened. The kids ran past the window again, one wearing a red sweater that caught the light like a drop of blood. Collateral is acceptable, Harrison had said once, voice flat as stone. We're not here to save everyone, just enough. But enough had never been her metric. Her radio crackled again. Execute. She didn't move. Cipher 7, execute. The rifle remained still. Through the scope, she watched Kovacevic lift his daughter into his arms. For a heartbeat, he wasn't an arms dealer. He was a father. Lucy's breath hitched, the first break in her control. She shifted her scope 2 centimeters, aimed not at the window but at the security generator behind the villa. One soft pull. A spark. The lights went out. Shouting erupted below. Guards scrambled, floodlights flickered and died. Lucy packed up her rifle, melted backward into the tree line. Cipher 7, report, the radio hissed. Negative shot, she said quietly. Target unconfirmed. Static, then Harrison's voice cutting through. Repeat, Cipher 7. Target unconfirmed, she repeated and killed the channel. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she moved downhill, ghosting through the dark forest. Each breath was visible, every heartbeat too loud. She knew the consequences. Disobeying a direct order didn't go unnoticed. Someone would come looking. Maybe that was fine. The safe house was silent when she returned, except for the hum of the single heater and the whisper of wind against the windows. She stripped her gear, laid her rifle on the table, and stared at her reflection in the black glass of the tablet screen. Her face looked older than 30. The eyes were different, colder, yes, but also haunted by something new. Doubt. She poured herself a cup of black coffee gone lukewarm and sat in the dark, the silence pressing against her until she almost welcomed it. Then the knock came. 3 taps, a pause, 2 more, the kind of rhythm that carried orders behind it. She opened the door. Harrison stood there, coat dusted with snow. He walked in without waiting for permission. "Did you take the shot?" he asked. Lucy didn't answer. "I'm not asking for poetry, Captain. I'm asking for confirmation." "I didn't," she said finally. His jaw tensed. "Why?" "Children. Collateral. Targets don't get to define innocence," she said sharply. "We do." He studied her. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "Yes," she said. "I stopped us from killing a family." He stepped closer, voice low. "You compromised a mission. You think command will see morality, I see liability." She held his stare. "Then report me." "Oh, I will," he said, "but not before I ask you one thing." He paused, measuring his words. "When did you start deciding who lives and who dies?" "When you stopped caring," she said quietly. The silence after that, was heavier than anger. Harrison finally sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're not like the others, Lucy. You think too much, feel too much. That's a problem in this line of work. It's what keeps me human." He gave a small, sad smile. "Humanity doesn't win wars." She looked down at her hands. "Maybe it's what stops us from losing ourselves in them." For the first time since she'd met him, Harrison looked tired. "You think you're saving your soul," he said softly. "But the system doesn't care about your soul. It cares about results." He turned toward the door, his shadow stretching long across the floor. "There's a plane tomorrow. You'll be on it, debrief in Langley. After that, you'll decide if the weapon still works," she finished for him. He stopped, didn't turn around. "Exactly." Then he left, the door closing behind him like the click of a lock. Lucy stood there for a long time, staring at the frost on the window. Outside, the forest was quiet. Inside, her pulse was a metronome of guilt. The flight home was empty except for her, and the memory of the shot she hadn't taken. She tried to sleep, but dreams came, sharp flashes of the valley ambush, of seals falling, of smoke and blood. And then the faces of two children in a snow-lit window. One laugh, frozen forever in her mind. She woke with her heart pounding, hands trembling not from fear, but from the realization that she'd finally drawn a line. And crossing it again would mean erasing what was left of her humanity. When the plane landed, the gray sky over Virginia felt unreal, too clean, too detached from the places she'd been. Langley's corridors smelled like polish and silence. She walked them like a ghost returning to the world of the living, unsure if she still belonged. The debriefing officer asked the usual questions: operational clarity, equipment performance, target verification. Every answer was perfect, rehearsed, sterile, safe. Only once did the officer look up, and the shot. Lucy met his eyes. Negative, target unverified. He nodded, typed something, and that was it. One false report, another buried truth. Outside the glass office, she caught her reflection again, the same face, but the eyes had changed. They weren't cold anymore. They were searching for something. Redemption, maybe, or just a reason to keep going. That night, Lucy walked alone through the quiet streets outside the base. The city lights glowed in puddles, cars whispered by, and for the first time in years, she felt small, one face in a world she'd been protecting from shadows. She stopped at a diner that smelled like coffee and rain. Inside, the television murmured news headlines no one cared about. She sat in a booth, ordered nothing, and listened to the ordinary sounds of life: forks clinking, laughter, a waitress humming under her breath. Normal. Unattainable. Beautiful. Her phone buzzed once, a coded message. Stand by for reassignment. She stared at it for a long moment, then powered the phone off and left it on the table beside the untouched cup of water. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled like clean asphalt and possibility. She looked up at the night sky, at the faint glow of stars buried under city haze. Maybe she wasn't finished yet. Maybe she just needed to decide who she really was, the weapon they'd built, or the person she still wanted to be. She turned the collar of her coat up, blending into the city crowd. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, ordinary life carrying on, oblivious to the ghosts that kept it safe. Lucy King walked on, anonymous again, the echo of Harrison's words following her like a shadow. Humanity doesn't win wars. Maybe not, she thought. But without it, nothing's worth winning. And as she disappeared into the night, she realized something quietly, painfully true. You can survive every mission, every bullet, every betrayal. But the hardest part isn't staying alive. It's staying human. The message came 3 weeks later. No return address, no signature, just a black envelope slipped under her apartment door. Inside, a single sheet of paper folded twice. Coordinates. Time. One sentence at the bottom in small serif type. You're not out yet. Lucy stared at it for a long time. The words felt heavy in her hands. The rain outside beat against the window like a warning, but there was no mistaking the handwriting. Harrison. So this was how it was going to be. No orders, no explanations. Just one more quiet demand from a world that refused to let her walk away. She packed without thinking, habit taking over. Sidearm, travel ID, suppressed rifle in a soft case, cash in 3 currencies. She moved like a shadow, retracing old paths she thought she'd buried. By dawn, she was gone. The location turned out to be a safe house on the outskirts of Warsaw, an abandoned textile mill repurposed for secrets. Dust hung in the air, the concrete walls sweating cold. Harrison was waiting. Same coat, same expressionless calm that had once impressed her but now just looked hollow. "You look tired," he said. "I thought I was finished," she replied. He shrugged. "You thought wrong, sit." She didn't. "If this is about the last mission." "It's not, this is different." He tapped a folder against the table, then slid it toward her. She hesitated, then opened it. Photographs, surveillance stills, satellite imagery, and one face, young, dark hair tied back, sharp blue eyes that carried a trace of familiarity. Lucy froze. "No." "Yes," Harrison said quietly, "that's your next target." Her throat went dry. "That's impossible, she's one of ours." "Was," he corrected. "Elena Cade, former JSOC signals officer. You trained her 6 years ago in cryptologic warfare. Now she's selling intel to the Russians. 3 U.S. operatives have died because of her leaks. We've confirmed the link." Lucy's fingers brushed the photograph, the memory sharp and alive. Elena at 22, laughing during a rain drill at Fort Bragg, hair plastered to her face, too bright for the world she was entering. "She's not a traitor," Lucy said quietly. "You don't know that." "I do." Harrison leaned back. "Do you think I enjoy this? You think I like putting one of my best assets on a sanctioned hit against someone you trained?" "Yes," she said, "I think you like control." His eyes hardened. "This isn't personal, it's operational. The leak must be plugged before it burns half our networks in Eastern Europe. You know what happens if we wait." Lucy stared at him, her jaw tightening. "And if the intel's wrong again? If this is another valley?" He didn't flinch. "Then you'll do what you always do, adjust." She wanted to scream, but the sound never came. Just a long, quiet exhale. "When?" "Tonight." "Extraction." "Solo entry, no exfil support, clean job in and out." "Of course," she said bitterly. "Wouldn't want witnesses." Harrison's face softened, almost imperceptibly. "She's staying at a flat near the Vistula River. We don't have a window beyond 24 hours. Make it clean, Lucy." He started to leave, then stopped at the door. "And King." "What?" "She taught herself to shoot after you left the program. Word is, she's almost as good as you." He left her standing there with that echo, almost as good. Almost. Warsaw at night was a mirror of light and rain, reflections blurred in puddles, headlights slicing through fog. Lucy moved through it unseen, the rifle case slung over her shoulder like a musician's bag. She reached the target building just before midnight, a modest brick apartment above a bakery that still smelled faintly of bread and ash. 4th floor, 2 exits, curtains drawn, no guards, no sign of panic. Through the scope of her suppressed rifle, Lucy watched the windows flicker with lamplight. Someone was packing inside, a silhouette she recognized even after 6 years. Elena. She looked older, sharper around the eyes, movement slower but deliberate. The same rhythm Lucy had taught her years ago, patience disguised as stillness. Lucy's finger hovered near the trigger. Just one breath, that was all it would take. Then a shadow crossed the window, Alina's profile turning just enough for Lucy to see something she hadn't expected. Not fear, not guilt. Resolve. And suddenly, Lucy wasn't sure who was hunting who. Her earpiece crackled once, Harrison's voice, thin with static. Cipher 7, confirm visual. Confirmed. Execute. Lucy's jaw clenched. No. Say again. I said no. King, what the hell are you doing? She's not a traitor. You don't get to decide that. She switched off the channel. The silence felt like a scream. Lucy disassembled the rifle piece by piece, then crossed the street and entered the building through a service door. The smell of wet stone and yeast from the bakery clung to her as she climbed the stairwell, every step deliberate, every nerve on fire. Fourth floor, door number 47B. She raised her hand, knocked twice. There was a pause, then a voice calm, familiar. You're late. The door opened. Alina stood there, barefoot, wearing a loose sweatshirt and the same expression Lucy remembered from the range, half amusement, half challenge. I figured you'd come eventually, she said. Lucy stepped inside. The apartment was small, neat, lived in. A single lamp cast warm light across papers scattered on the table, maps, intercepted transmissions, photos of armored convoys. So it's true, Lucy said softly. That depends what you mean by true, Alina replied. Sit. Lucy didn't. They say you're selling intel. I'm trading it. Trading. For protection, Alina said. For leverage. The agency burned me 2 years ago. Accused me of double-dealing after an op in Odessa went sideways. They left me to die, so I did what I had to. Lucy's eyes flicked to the papers. How many people have died because of your trades? How many have you killed because someone told you they were the enemy? Alina shot back. Lucy froze. I know what you do now, Alina said. You think your missions are clean because they're written that way. But you've been killing ghosts built by people like Harrison. He feeds you fiction and calls it justice. That's not true. Then why are you here? The question hit like a physical blow. Lucy's silence was the answer. Alina stepped closer, eyes glinting in the lamplight. You came to kill me because someone put my face in a folder. You didn't even ask why. You just showed up. Because I thought you were dead, Lucy whispered. And now? Lucy looked at her, really looked. The same fire, the same recklessness she once admired. Now I'm not sure what's worse, that they lied to me or that I believed them. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hall. Heavy, deliberate, not random. Alina's head snapped up. They found you. No, Lucy said, reaching for her pistol. They found us. The window shattered as the first burst of automatic fire ripped through the apartment. Glass exploded inward. Lamps fell. Sparks showered the floor. Lucy shoved Alina behind the table as another burst tore through the wall. They're early, Lucy hissed, returning fire toward the stairwell. 2 shadows fell, more coming. Whose men? Alina demanded. Not mine. Then whose? Lucy's silence said everything. The building shook with the impact of a grenade detonating below. The air filled with dust and burning plaster. Lucy fired again, counting her rounds, her mind running calculations even as chaos closed in. They were boxed in, no exit except the roof. This way, Alina shouted, grabbing her laptop and sprinting toward the fire escape. Lucy followed, covering their retreat with short, surgical bursts. The metal steps groaned under their weight as they climbed into the cold night. Snow fell in slow, thick flakes, beautiful and unreal against the violence below. They reached the roof. The city stretched out around them, lights reflecting in the river like 1,000 fractured stars. Behind them, boots thundered up the stairs. Lucy turned, gun raised. Go. I'm not leaving you. Move, damn it. Alina hesitated, then obeyed, sprinting across the rooftop toward the next building. Lucy took her final position at the ledge, eyes narrowing as the first figure appeared through the smoke. Clean gear. American issue. Her stomach dropped. Not Russians. Not mercenaries. Agency. Her own people. They'd never planned for her to leave Warsaw alive. She fired 3 shots, center mass perfect. The man dropped. Another followed, then another, but there were too many. Lucy, Alina's voice carried from the next roof. Jump. Lucy turned, sprinted, the ledge closing fast. She jumped. The air tore past her, 1, 2, 3 seconds of pure weightlessness. Then her boots hit gravel hard. She rolled, pain shooting through her ribs, but she was moving again before she could feel it. Alina grabbed her arm. They'll keep coming. I know. Then what now? Lucy looked at her, at the woman she was supposed to kill, the student who'd become her mirror. Now, Lucy said, chambering a fresh round, we find out why they wanted you dead. The night swallowed them as they disappeared into the labyrinth of narrow streets. Behind them the building burned, and Harrison's voice echoed faintly over an encrypted channel, sharp with frustration and disbelief. Cipher 7, report. Cipher 7, do you copy? But Lucy King wasn't listening anymore. For the first time in her career, she wasn't following orders. She was following truth. And somewhere deep down, beneath the exhaustion and the anger and the moral ruin, something flickered alive, something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not assigned, not commanded, not bought. Chosen. Snow blurred the streets into silence. Warsaw slept, Lucy King didn't. Every window felt like an eye, every siren in the distance a warning. She and Alina moved through the back alleys, hoods up, guns close, 2 ghosts trailing their own shadows. Keep your head down, Lucy whispered. I spent 3 years doing that, Alina said. Didn't help. They ducked beneath a rust-streaked bridge. A freight train clattered above them, drowning out their footsteps. Steam drifted from a cracked pipe and wrapped around them like fog. Where are we going? Alina asked. Somewhere no one remembers. An hour later they reached an abandoned metro station, half-flooded, lit only by the blue glow of Lucy's phone. The air smelled of iron and oil. Their breath hung like ghosts between them. Alina set down her pack. You knew they'd send people after us. Lucy nodded once. If I'm off mission, I'm a liability. You're evidence. Evidence of what? Lucy looked around the tunnel, crumbling tiles, rats skittering through puddles, and spoke softly, like someone afraid the darkness might be listening. About 2 years ago, a compartmental program inside JSOC went blacker than black. Harrison was part of it. Off-books assassinations, intel manipulation, using contractors and internal assets to create chaos they could then solve. Each success justified more funding, more reach. I was one of their tools. Alina frowned. False flag operations. Controlled instability, Lucy corrected. Make the world need you, then make sure you're the only one who can fix it. Alina sank onto the cold concrete, and the valley ambush. They planned it, Lucy said quietly. They fed the Taliban real coordinates to test their own leak detection protocol. My team was never supposed to walk out. For a moment, the sound of dripping water was the only thing alive. Alina stared at her, and you still worked for them. I thought I could steer it, keep it from crossing the line. You mean killing children? Lucy didn't answer. She sat down opposite her, back against the wall, eyes distant. When you've lived long enough in the dark, you start to think the dark is light, until someone else walks in, and you see the difference again. Alina looked away. That's supposed to be me. Lucy gave a small, tired smile. Maybe. By dawn, the snow had stopped. The city above was gray and quiet, wrapped in the hush that comes before bad news spreads. Lucy connected the laptop Alina had risked her life to steal. Code scrolled in green and white across the cracked screen. "What's on it?" Lucy asked. "Files from the Warsaw station. Payment routes, contractor names, encrypted directives. If I can decrypt the last layer, we'll have proof Harrison's cell is using NATO operations as cover." Lucy watched the numbers flicker. Proof means nothing if no one wants to believe it. "Then we find someone who still does," Elena said. Lucy almost laughed. "You think anyone in that world remembers belief?" "Maybe not, but someone out there still believes in the oath. Even if the flag's dirty, the promise doesn't have to be." Lucy studied her, this woman she'd once trained, who now carried more faith than she'd ever had. The contrast hurt. A soft beep cut through the quiet. The last encryption line dissolved. A file opened, names, dates, account transfers, Harrison among them, and one more. Lucy's breath caught. Her own. There it was, King, LUCILLEA termination protocol, active upon breach. Elena read it too. "They marked you before Warsaw." Lucy closed the laptop. "Then there's no going back." They surfaced just after noon, blending into the crowd at a tram stop. Lucy wore a borrowed coat, Elena a knitted cap pulled low. The city looked ordinary: coffee carts, school kids, someone playing violin under an awning. Ordinary, fragile. Lucy caught her reflection in a shop window, unremarkable, anonymous. That should have comforted her. It didn't. "They'll sweep the area soon," Elena said. "We need distance." Lucy nodded. "East, forest roads. I know a contact near Lublin who owes me." They rode the tram in silence. The rhythmic clatter on the rails reminded Lucy of aircraft turbulence, the same helpless momentum. Around them, commuters scrolled through phones, lost in digital worlds that had no idea the real one was burning quietly underneath. Elena leaned closer. "If we get this data out, what then? They'll just bury it." "Not if we make it public," Lucy said. "Not leaks to journalists, direct broadcast, proof on open channels." "You'd expose yourself." Lucy gave a faint smile. "They already did." By nightfall they reached the safe farmhouse outside Lublin. It smelled of damp wood and diesel. Lucy checked perimeters, laid out rifles on a kitchen table scarred by age. Elena brewed coffee strong enough to strip paint. 2 days, Lucy said. "That's how long we have before they triangulate us." "Plenty of time," Elena murmured, typing. "Plenty to die in," Lucy said. Elena stopped typing. "You ever wonder who you were before this?" "Someone else's theory," Lucy answered. "Someone's plan. They built me to be precise, not whole." "That's not what I asked." Lucy looked at her across the flickering lamplight. "Yeah, I wonder." A sound outside cut the conversation short. A soft crunch of snow, too measured to be wind. Lucy's pistol was in her hand before the next heartbeat. She moved to the window, peeled back the curtain. 2 shapes near the tree line. Laser dots swept across the glass. "Down," she hissed. The window exploded inward. They rolled behind the heavy oak table as rounds chewed through the wall. Lucy returned fire, controlled pairs, breathing steady. One target fell, the other retreated. Elena reloaded for her, hands shaking but fast. "How do they keep finding us?" "Satellite pings, my ID tag still active." "You can't disable it." "Not here," she pointed to the truck outside. "Move." They sprinted through the back door, snow up to their knees. The engine coughed, caught. Lucy slammed the gear, tires spinning on ice as bullets hit the tailgate. They tore down the country road, headlights off, the farmhouse shrinking into darkness behind them. After a mile, she cut the lights and pulled into a thicket of trees. Breath steamed the cab. Both women sat there, hearts pounding, waiting for the echo of gunfire to fade. Finally, Elena said, "They're not trying to arrest us." "No," Lucy said, "they're cleaning up." They camped in the forest that night, a small fire hidden under a canvas sheet. The cold bit through their clothes, but the silence was safer than warmth. Elena handed Lucy a tin cup of instant coffee. When this is over, she said, what will you do? Over, Lucy echoed. You think things like this end? They have to. Lucy stared into the flames. Maybe for you, you still have a life to go back to, family, hope. Elena shook her head. I had all that once, the job took it. Lucy's voice softened. Then we don't let it take what's left. For a moment, there was peace. The kind that comes when two people finally understand they're the same species of broken. Then Lucy heard it, the faint whine of drones, high, distant, hunting. She doused the fire with snow. Move. They ran through the trees, branches slashing their faces, snow crunching loud in the quiet. The drones grew louder, searchlights slicing through the canopy like pale knives. Split up, Lucy shouted. No, Elena's voice cracked. You can't cover both flanks alone. I don't need to, they want me. Lucy shoved the encrypted drive into Elena's coat pocket. Get it out. There's a contact in Prague, Daniel Kerr, ex-CIA. He'll know what to do. I'm not leaving you. Lucy's eyes met hers. You already did once. Don't make the same mistake twice. Elena's throat tightened. Lucy. Go. A flash lit the forest as a drone missile hit 30 yards behind them. The shockwave knocked them both down. Lucy rose first, firing upward, hitting a drone's camera with 2 impossible shots before it veered and crashed in a burning spiral. She turned back. Elena was gone, swallowed by the trees. For a second, Lucy wanted to follow. Then she heard more rotors approaching. Too many. She moved the other way, drawing them off, leading the hunt into deeper woods. Snow fell harder, muting everything except her heartbeat. When the forest finally went still, she dropped to one knee behind a fallen log, blood trickling from a cut above her eye. The silence returned, the kind that wasn't peace but exhaustion wearing a mask. She looked up at the distant drone lights fatting over the horizon and whispered to no one, "Run, Elena." Then she pressed her back against the tree, eyes closing for the first time in hours. Somewhere behind her, the fire of her old life burned itself out. Ahead waited whatever came next, exile, capture, maybe worse. But for the first time, Lucy King wasn't afraid. She stopped being their weapon. Now she was their witness. And witnesses were harder to kill than ghosts. 3 months. That's how long it took for the world to forget Lucy King. The report called it an operational accident. Satellite loss, high explosive detonation, 0 survivability, file sealed, case closed. No one asked questions because questions cost careers. But Lucy wasn't dead. She learned long ago that survival was just another tradecraft. Now she lived beneath a false name in a fishing village on the Adriatic, in a cottage that smelled of salt and diesel. She woke before dawn, ran along the cliffs, drank bitter coffee, fixed nets for the locals who didn't ask why her hands were too steady for that kind of work. Every night she opened the laptop Elena had left her, a battered thing with one file hidden deep in its code. The drive Elena carried had made it to Prague. Kerr had decrypted it and sent a fragment back through channels only ghosts still used. The evidence was there. Harrison's network, the shell companies, the contracts that turned chaos into currency. Enough to burn the system down, if she could find a way to light it. She stared at the screen until the sea turned black again. Revenge wasn't the plan, it was just gravity. The knock came during a storm. Soft, polite, wrong. Nobody in the village knocked. They shouted through doors or waited by the docks. Lucy drew her pistol, moved to the side of the frame, and opened the door a fraction. A man stood in the rain, coat dripping, hands empty. Late 50s, the kind of quiet posture that said he'd carried weight most of his life. "Daniel Kerr," he said. She let him in. He looked around the small room, maps on the table, rifle stripped for cleaning, a kettle hissing on the stove. "You always this ready?" "I don't know how to be anything else." He nodded toward the laptop. "You got the message." Fragments. He took a seat. The files Alina passed me didn't just expose Harrison's unit. They show he's gone freelance, selling operations, subcontracting assassinations under false flags. The people paying him are wearing both uniforms and suits. Lucy's jaw tightened. How far up? Farther than we can reach with lawyers. So we reach them another way. Care studied her. I heard stories about you. The sniper in the valley, the analyst who was. They said you were precise, detached. What do you think? I think detached people don't hide in fishing towns staring at waves. Lucy looked out the window, rain streaking the glass. What do you want from me? I want proof the world can still clean itself, and I can't get that proof without you. She didn't answer. Outside, thunder rolled across the sea. Care placed a small drive on the table. Coordinates: Dubrovnik. Cargo manifest under Harrison's alias. He's meeting his buyers in 72 hours. We take that meat, we take him. Lucy's voice was almost a whisper. Alina. She's alive, underground, working the digital trail. But if we don't move fast, Harrison wipes everything. Lucy picked up the drive, turning it between her fingers like a coin. Then we move. Dubrovnik by night was a postcard of deception. Tourists drunk on the walls, yachts rocking in the harbor, and somewhere between them, a transaction that could rewrite wars. Lucy and Care moved through the crowd like strangers who didn't exist. She wore civilian clothes, hair shorter now, dyed a deep chestnut that made her eyes look even colder. The rifle stayed disassembled in a violin case slung across her shoulder. They reached the marina at 200. Rain again. The meeting took place on a white yacht moored at the far pier, its lights dimmed to business. 2 guards outside, 3 more inside. Harrison was there. Lucy saw him through the window, same calm arrogance, same slow sip of scotch. Care murmured, "We record, not kill, proof first." Lucy didn't answer. The sight of Harrison alive, relaxed, unpunished, clawed at something deep. She could still hear him saying, "You're a tool we use." She drew a slow breath, forcing her pulse down. Precision, not rage. Care placed a transmitter under the railing. Audio live in 10 seconds. They listened through an earpiece. Harrison discussing logistics, money transfers, next targets. The buyers were clean-sounding men with clipped English accents, private sector types who sold morality by the pound. Then one of them said something that froze Lucy where she stood. "Your ghost asset, King, she's confirmed dead." Harrison's laugh carried through the static. "We built her death ourselves. The myth's useful. She keeps the others obedient even from the grave." Care glanced at Lucy. Her expression didn't change, but the air around her did, sharp, focused, dangerous. "Got enough?" she asked quietly. "More than enough, let's." The earpiece erupted with static, then silence. A camera on the yacht had turned, lens glinting in their direction. "They saw us." Guards moved fast, too fast, not hired muscle-trained men. Lucy shoved Care toward the dock ladder. "Go." She slipped the rifle parts together in seconds, every motion mechanical. 2 rounds, 2 bodies down. The yacht's alarm screamed. Harrison ducked below deck. Lucy sprinted forward, jumped the gap between pier and hull, landed low, rolled, came up firing. The narrow corridor smelled of oil and gunpowder. Another guard, dead before he finished turning. She reached the cabin, empty. Papers still on the table, Scotch glass rolling with the sway. A hatch opened to the engine deck. She followed. Below, the air was thick with diesel and heat. Harrison stood near the stern, gun in hand. When he saw her, he didn't flinch. "I knew the storm wouldn't take you," he said. "Why?" "Because you're my finest creation." "I'm not yours." He smiled thinly. "You think running changes what you are. You were built for this, precision, detachment. The world needs people like you. The rest of us just give them orders." She aimed at his chest. "Not anymore." "Then pull the trigger, finish your myth." The yacht lurched suddenly, a burst of gunfire from above. Care shouting, engines roaring. Harrison used the motion, slammed her arm aside, the shot going wide. They struggled, guns skidding across the metal deck. He was strong, but she was faster. A knee, an elbow, a twist. She pinned him against the bulkhead, her forearm against his throat. "You killed them," she hissed. "The team in the valley. You sold us out to test your system." He rasped, "Collateral, necessary." "Say it again." He didn't get the chance. The sound that followed was quiet, final. Her sidearm dropped to her side as he slumped to the floor. Lucy stood there, chest heaving, the smell of gun oil and sea salt thick around her. Over the radio, Care's voice crackled, panicked. "Lucy, extraction now, Coast Guard inbound. We have what we need. Do you copy?" She looked down at Harrison's body. "Copy." She took the flash drive from his pocket, slipped it into her jacket, then moved topside. The rain had turned the deck into glass. Lights flared in the harbor, search beams, sirens. Care waved from the pier, motioning her to jump. She did. Cold water swallowed her whole. They reached open sea on a stolen skiff before the Coast Guard closed the net. Care drove. Lucy sat in the stern, soaked, silent, the flash drive clenched in her hand. "You didn't have to kill him," Care said finally. "I did," she murmured. "Some truths don't fit in a courtroom." He looked at her, wanting to argue, then stopped. There was no point. She wasn't just ending a man, she was ending a chain of ghosts. 2 days later, they met Alina in an abandoned church in Trieste. The stained glass was broken, colors scattered across the floor like forgotten prayers. Alina hugged her once, quick, fierce, real. "They said you were dead." "I was," Lucy said. "Now I'm inconvenient." Care laid the drive on the altar. "This is everything. Financial links, authorization codes, transcripts. If this goes public, half the black network burns." Alina connected her tablet, fingers flying. "I can upload through 3 separate nodes: London, Reykjavik, Buenos Aires. Once it's live, it can't be stopped." Lucy watched the progress bar crawl. Every percentage felt heavier. Each number a ghost accounted for. "Are you ready?" Alina asked. Lucy hesitated. "This will expose us too." "Maybe that's the point," Care said. She thought of the valley, of the seals she'd saved, of Harrison's words. "You were built for this." Maybe he'd been half right. Maybe she had been built for something, but not obedience, not silence. "Do it," she said. Alina pressed enter. The upload began, slow, unstoppable. Files scattering into the digital ether like ash caught in wind. Outside, the church bells rang midnight. None of them had touched the ropes. By morning, the world had changed. Headlines exploded across networks. Black ops/private contracts/state collusion. Politicians denied, agencies scrambled, analysts whispered the name Project Cipher. No one said her name, they never would. That was fine. Legends didn't need signatures. Lucy watched the news from a cafe near the port, sunlight breaking through the haze. People around her argued about soccer, taxes, anything but the truth unfolding on the screens. Life went on as it always did. Alina and Care joined her, faces drawn but alive. "What now?" Alina asked. Lucy sipped her coffee. "Now the world decides if it wants to stay blind." "And us?" Lucy looked out toward the sea. "We disappear, again." Care smiled faintly. "You think they'll stop looking?" "They can't catch a myth," Lucy said. She stood, dropping a few coins on the table. "And myths don't retire, they fade." She started walking toward the docks, the morning light catching her profile, calm, unreadable, free. Alina called after her, "Lucy, will we ever see you again?" She didn't turn, probably not. Her voice was soft, almost drowned by the sound of gulls. "But if you ever hear silence where there should have been violence," she said, "maybe that's me." And then she was gone, just another traveler lost in the crowd. leaving only the echo of a truth she'd finally made visible. Sometimes justice doesn't speak. It simply acts. Months passed before the world remembered to breathe again. The scandal burned hot, then cold, like every truth too large for headlines. Committees formed, names vanished, Harrison's network fractured into silence, pieces swallowed by governments pretending they never known. And somewhere along the Adriatic, the sea kept its own counsel. Lucy King lived by it still, a new name on a faded passport, scars where duty had once lived. Her mornings were salt and wind, her nights the slow rhythm of a tide that forgot nothing. Sometimes she thought she could almost disappear. She worked at the harbor now, fixing boat engines. The fishermen had stopped asking questions long ago. To them, she was the quiet foreigner who never missed a sunrise and never lost her temper. They didn't know that every torque wrench in her hand steadied something deeper than machinery. Once a week she walked the cliffs. From there she could see the old lighthouse, its beam cutting across the dark like a promise that refused to die. The gulls followed her sometimes, fearless, as if they sensed she'd stopped hunting anything but peace. One evening she found a letter wedged beneath her door, no stamp, no return. Inside, 3 words. It reached them. No signature, but she knew the handwriting, Alina. She folded the note carefully, slid it into the pocket of her jacket, proof that at least one ghost besides her was still breathing. The next morning the news reached even the fishermen. A tribunal in Geneva, arrests, a few officers stepping down for health reasons. Nothing loud, but enough, just enough. That night she walked down to the water, boots sinking into wet sand, the horizon burning faint orange. She thought about Harrison, about all the faces the reports had never named. The world hadn't been fixed, it never would be. But for the first time, it had looked at itself in the mirror and flinched. That was something. Care found her again in late autumn. He came limping down the pier with the same cautious patience she remembered. He looked thinner, grayer, but still stubbornly alive. "You keep changing continents," he said. "You keep finding me." He smiled. "Old habits. I thought you'd want to know. The files stayed online, couldn't be erased. Half the old network is running scared, the other half's trying to build something better. Good luck to them." He leaned on the railing beside her. "You could help." Lucy watched a trawler crawl across the horizon, its lights trembling on the waves. "I already did." "You really think hiding here counts as peace?" She gave a small laugh. "Peace isn't what you think it is, Daniel. It's not silence. It's learning which ghosts you can live with." He studied her for a long time, "And the ones you can't." "I tell them stories," she said quietly, "so they remember me kindly." He nodded, the kind of nod that meant he understood more than he wanted to. Then he handed her a small package, wrapped in plain paper. "What's this?" "Something Alina wanted you to have." He left before she could ask more. Lucy unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a camera, the same battered Nikon Alina had carried during training. The memory card held only one image, a photograph of the 2 of them standing in front of the Trieste church the night they released the files. Alina had written underneath in marker, "For once we aimed at truth." Lucy stared at the picture until the edges blurred. Then she smiled, small, real, unguarded. Winter came, the village emptied, tourists vanished. The sea grew darker, rougher, honest. She spent most evenings at the pier, watching storms build. The wind whipped her hair into her face, salt stung her lips, and for a heartbeat she felt alive the way she had in combat. Only now the enemy was time, and she was finally letting it win. Sometimes kids from the village would run up, asking her to teach them how to fish or fix their slingshots. She always said yes. Precision, after all, had never been the problem. It was what you used it for. One boy, maybe 12, once asked her, "Miss, were you a soldier?" She hesitated. The truth hovered between them like fog. I tried to be, she said. He grinned. Did you win? She looked out at the storm, still trying. That night she dreamed of the valley again, the broken ridge, the cold wind, the faces of the men she'd saved. But this time the dream shifted. The gun was gone. She stood unarmed, the sound of battle replaced by waves. And for the first time in years, no one was bleeding. She woke before dawn, heart steady, air smelling of rain. A new day, the kind that didn't ask anything from her. She boiled water for coffee, the small kettle whistling like a distant memory of command radios. Outside, the sea glowed silver under a sliver of moon. She took her cup to the shore, sat on the cold stones, and watched the horizon begin to pale. The world would keep moving, new wars, new shadows, new names. But she'd learned something they never taught in training. You can't shoot your way to peace. You can only walk there, one quiet choice at a time. And some days, the bravest thing you can do is refuse the order. By spring, the first fishermen were back. Life folded around her again. Nets, gulls, shouted jokes she pretended not to understand. One of them left a small wooden carving on her doorstep, a woman holding a torch, no inscription. She placed it on the table beside the old Nikon. That evening she wrote a short note, sealed it in a weathered envelope, and sent it with a courier heading north. The note had only 2 sentences. Keep aiming at truth, don't let the silence win. No signature, Alina would know anyway. Weeks later, on a gray morning thick with mist, Lucy took her small boat out past the harbor mouth. The air was cold, the sea restless. She cut the engine halfway to the horizon and let the current take her. She watched the coastline fade until the world was nothing but water and sky. Then she opened her hand. In her palm lay a single spent rifle casing, dull, weathered, almost forgotten. She turned it once between her fingers, then dropped it into the sea. It vanished with barely a sound. Some debts couldn't be paid, they could only be released. The wind rose, carrying the faint scent of rain. Lucy leaned back against the hull, eyes half closed, the horizon dissolving into light. Voiceover, almost a whisper. They built her to be a weapon, but she became a mirror instead. And in that reflection, the world saw what it had done to itself. Maybe that's all redemption really is. Not forgiveness, just finally being seen for what you are and choosing better anyway. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts and then walks away. The camera drifts upward, the boat a small shape on a silver sea, waves breaking quietly around it, light spilling across the water like absolution. Then the screen fades to black. A pause, a heartbeat, and her voice again, faint but certain. End of transmission.